Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. In this episode of the podcast, I'm talking with Dr. Jim Sears. He's a pediatrician in private practice with his father and brother in Southern California. His family has a website called Ask Dr. Sears, which he contributes to, and he's written several books about children's well-being, nutrition, and lots of other topics. I've known Dr. Jim, as he's known by his patients, for the past 14 years as a camp doctor. And in this episode, we chat about one thing that he's really been focused on lately, which is helping his patients develop their children's self-esteem. Enjoy the podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Dr. Jim Sears. Welcome.
Thanks, Sunshine. Or Audrey. I don't think I've ever called you Audrey.
I know. And I've never called you Dr. Jim Sears either. We call you Bones here at camp.
That's my camp name. I'm a pediatrician. And I'm from a family of pediatricians. My dad was kind of a pioneer in attachment style parenting, a lot of child care books over the years. And in the last 7 or 8 books I've co-authored with him, and so I'm all about obviously physical, medical wellness, but also emotional and developmental wellness in kids. All 3 of my kids have gone or are going to camp right now with you. My oldest one was a camper, and then a junior camp counselor, and then a counselor for a few years, and my son, same kind of thing. He junior counselor. He's off at college now, but he wants to come back for next summer, I think.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And then my youngest, who's 12, is at camp right now, dealing with the typical girl drama that can happen when kids live in close quarters. But it's learning. It's good for her.
Yeah,
good.
Great. So just a little bit of background. So Bones, as I call him, has been a camp doctor. Is it
14th year? Yeah.
14 years. And we've talked a lot over the years and kind of collaborated about just kids' well-being and different ideas of things that we do at camp and things parents can do at home. And so today we decided to talk about something that has been really important to you and something you've been finding useful in your with your patients, and that's just ideas for helping to build children's self-esteem.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's massively important. I mean, obviously, to become an adult. And by the way, I love the theme of your podcast. I don't know if I could say it verbatim,
sure.
But whenever you say at the beginning, whenever you say it, to build kids, whatever it is,
summer camp, happiness, parenting, and to build more resilient kids,
right, and to become well-adjusted, flourishing adults.
Yep.
I mean, that. Who wouldn't want that for any of their children, right? And a lot of that is having the kids feel good about themselves. Now, that doesn't mean the child thinks they're better than everybody else, but what it does mean is the child doesn't think that everybody else is better than them, and so you can't really just sit down with your child one day, okay, we're going to sit and build your self-esteem. It's you kind of just have to do it by living it. And I think with my kids, I kind of just developed a daily way of doing things that just over time helped them feel good about themselves, and even whether it was successes or failures, they learned from the failures and the successes, and they grew up feeling good and well balanced and well adjusted. And I think there's one of the keys for me was trying to take the emotional component out of parenting. I often used the analogy of a referee in a football game. Now, sure, sometimes you see the refs lose their temper and yell back at the players, but most of the time when the player blows it, does a holding or offsides, simply that, well, you broke the rule and the penalty is this, and we're moving on, and
right.
so I try to, when my kids would blow it, not blow it myself and just go, and one of the things we did was have discussed, written down rules that were posted in plain sight. If you lie, here is the consequence. If you on your go over your phone limit, here's the consequence. If you forget of whatever. And so we go, well, I'll use my kids' names.
Yeah, that's fine.
well, Leah, you lied about picking up your room, and so let's see what the consequence is. Oh, you lose your phone for a day. Okay, and
right.
We're moving on. There's no yelling, there's no crying,
right.
and I think it helped me. Because as soon as you see they lied, you want to just inside you. But then in the 10 seconds that it would take for me to walk over to the rule book, so to speak, and go, it would allow me to calm down and go, okay, remember, we're just gonna just a simple penalty here and moving on. And so a lot of my themes are just try not to blow it.
Right. So is that what you find yourself talking with a lot with your patients and kind of with their parents, just trying to guide them to not be so, what is that thing? It's like with parents, they just take things so like it's about them and they take it very personally when their child does something. And I always say to people, it's so much harder working with your own kids than with other people's kids. And I don't know if you find this way because harder. For one thing, other people's children, like at camp, respond a lot better to my guidance than my own children.
Right.
And I have an example even this week. So I'm trying to get my son to read this book that I've been recommending a lot, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. Okay, it's really a great book, really easy to read, and it goes over these habits, and we're using it with our junior counselors this summer. My son's starting high school, and so with another friend of his, I said, hey guys, let's read this book over the next week and a half or 2 weeks, and we'll just talk about them at dinner. And of course, my son is like, I don't want to read the book, and he was like you said, I didn't even react. I was like, okay, well, we're going to discuss it. You can join us or not. And then the other kid is like, okay, I'll read.
I want to read that.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it. I think as parents, just realizing when they're feeling like struggling or getting really bothered by something of their child's behavior. First of all, if you are well attached, your child's worst behavior is going to be with you.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean.
Sure.
You'll see things that teachers and camp counselors and other people don't see, which is actually a good sign. If your kids feel so comfortable with you that they're going to be their worst, that means that they feel unconditional love. They know they can be terrible and they're still going to be loved.
That's a good point. I think one of the things parents do, your kids are acting up in a restaurant, and you as a parent, you feel like everybody's looking at you, judging you, and saying what a bad parent you are, and that's where that emotional component comes in,
right.
And you just have to kind of just take a step back and not react to it. You mentioned something about your kids tend to take advice from other adults way better than your own. I found it's good to try to have a consistent alternative adult, whether it's an aunt. That's what our kids right now. There's the aunt, the cousins all play together a lot. So whether it's my wife or her sister, or they kind of take turns watching all the kids, and so all the kids get some good time with a non-parent adult. Just giving them good advice, and sometimes we'll pull the aunt aside. Hey, let's make sure we work on this, that, or the other.
Right? Yeah.
Can you suggest she read that book because she didn't listen to us?
Yeah.
I
have people tell me that at camp, campers from camp, their parents will say, "Well, Sunshine says you need to plug your phone in downstairs," and it just kind of looked funny. I'm like, really, it works for you? I guess that's great, but I really agree with that. And that's one of the magical things about summer camp is that the counselors are not their parents. And so when the counselors are saying things like, hey, you know what, we're going to build each other up, we're going to say positive things to each other, we're not going to allow just put downs even if we're joking around, the kids take it in pretty well. And I think that was one of the things that you were talking about, is just how we talk to our kids and how we can just sort of focus more on building them up and talking with them about things that we like about them, rather than kind of finding ourselves harping on their shortcomings or their failures.
Right. Yeah. One of my main points is, and this one will be a brief one, just make sure you show love every day, and that's not it's not going overboard, throwing a balloon birthday cake party every day, but just making sure whether it's a little note in their lunch or something, hey, love you, or just making sure you tell them you love them on a phone call, at the end of a phone call or something. And I'll be honest, there was when my kids were younger, this is probably at least 15 years ago, I found myself very, very busy, and I would kind of realize, well, it's been a few days since I've said to my kids, I love you. And so I hate to admit I had to do this, but I actually had to set an appointment in my schedule, just a reminder every day. I did it for a couple of weeks, and then I got into a habit. But it just just a quick reminder. My phone would go off, a little alarm. Tell your kids you love them. Oh yeah. And then because you as a parent and a busy parent, you can get too busy.
Yep. That's a great idea. I mean, there's a lot of things that you think shouldn't have to be something that you remind yourself or have be a habit, but for positive relationships, often it's necessary. Yeah. And I think, especially as kids get older, like teenage years, a lot of the interactions can sometimes become negative. Yeah. About their room being messy or something with their friends or too much screen time, and that whole what is the Losado ratio, where you talk about for good relationships, for positive relationships, there needs to be like 5 positive interactions for every 1 kind of negative or constructive one for the relationship to stay positive. And with our kids, when you think about their day, especially teenagers, they wake up, they're tired. It's too early to leave for school. And oftentimes we're like, oh, do you have your backpack? Do you have this? Do you have that? Oh my gosh, did you study enough for this test? And it's like this kind of barrage of like negativity when they're already tired and everything else. And so just remembering to just say, hey, you know what? You're really funny. I like seeing you in the morning, or you're making my day brighter. Just those little positive comments or notes or things are so important, especially when they're going through that time where a lot of them are not feeling great about themselves. So they need us to really be pouring kind of positive stuff that we see into them during that time, I think. Yeah.
That's a really good point, and I've found that if I think, I need to go talk to my child about this negative thing, I go, have I already done a few positives today yet? And if I haven't, okay, I'll make sure I do before I bring up the negative thing. One really nice way of doing that doesn't seem staged or, mom said I need to sit down and talk with me about something, and it's all intimidating. Simply play with them. Yeah. Hey, let's do a game. Whether it's a card game, throwing the ball, throwing the frisbee, or even sitting down and playing their video game with them. As much as we hate seeing our kids playing video games, there was a time both my boys, I had to kind of go, instead of you're playing too many video games, come on, do something else. I just sat down and started playing with them, and what it did, it communicated to the child that, wow, my dad likes to sit and just spend time with me, and is interested in what I'm interested in. And I found, as much as and honestly, when I first started doing it, I hated it. I'm like, I'm really going to encourage more video games in this child. But after a couple of days, I look back on that half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was, and go, wow, that was some really quality time. We sat and chatted about just nonsense, but it was time that the child went, yep, my parents interested in me, interested in what I am interested in, and it made them feel good.
Yeah. I think that's really, because it's just showing that you care, you're getting into their world, you care enough about them to do something that maybe isn't your favorite activity anyway. Yeah. I think that's really a good example.
Yeah. Studies actually show when the parent plays with their child, their chance of happiness goes up, and their risk of depression and anxiety go down. So,
any kind of play, right? Doesn't have to be video games.
Any kind of play.
Yeah. So good.
And so another thing I do regularly that boosts your child's self-esteem is giving them chores and responsibilities. And you're like, wait a minute, you're making your kids work? What is that? What it does is it gives the child, as long as they're age appropriate responsibilities that they can be successful at, it gives them a sense of purpose, and I think that's super important. Having them wake up and feeling like they have a reason that they're on this planet you know, and as opposed to just, you know, what am I here? What am I doing? What, you know, and of accomplishment. You know, I remember vividly as a child hating that I had to weed the side yard, and halfway through it felt like this was just this unaccomplishable task, and I felt like my parents hated me for making me do it. But at the end, I would look back and go, wow, I did that, you know, and I think it's important, and that kind of lesson stuck through me for term papers in high school, even longer term papers in college, and then, you know, medical boards and stuff that I thought I could never pass. I was like, well, hey, I got this, you know, and to teach that with your children, whether it's just letting them be in charge of the dishwasher or the trash or simply just keeping the room tidy. Gives them because the last thing I want my kids to do is feel aimless and like they're just wandering and kind of, well, what am I going to do? I guess I'm bored. I guess I'll just pick up my phone and lose myself, as opposed to go, I kind of would like to play, but I know I still I got my little task, and I'll do the task, and then I feel like I did something.
Yeah. Well, I agree. It's almost like, I think in the 80s with all the self-esteem movement time, during that time, it was all about, don't put a bad grade on anything. Anything goes. Tell them they're great all the time. It was not what kids really needed. And I agree with you that when you build sort of your competence, you naturally feel better about yourself. So when you are able to clean a kitchen well, and even if you're grumbling while doing it, there is a sense of pride in that. It's funny. That's a funny example, because of course my kids have always had to do chores. I think in families where both parents work and are busy, kids need to be helpful, and that is good for their confidence, because when you're needed and have a purpose and you understand that your household will not run functionally and well without your help, you feel a sense of purpose in your family, and it's really important. And it's so funny because several times over the past couple of years I've had other parents say to me how good my son is at doing dishes, because when he's at other people's houses, he knows how to clean the counters, finish up a kitchen. And it's funny because I've told him, and it does make him feel good, even if it's like, he doesn't love doing the dishes, but we let him play music and whatever. We try to make it fun. But I agree 100%. And with the prolonged adolescence that we have now, you have a long time that can be very purposeless, and can lead to a really sense of just depression and worthlessness and no reason to live. Because when you're just kind of going to school and you don't really know what you want to study, you're not really interested in school, and you don't feel like you don't have a job or any responsibilities or anyone who depends on you, it really can lead to feeling terrible. So I agree. Chores, and that's what a lot, like you said, the research is showing, and it's been in a lot of recent books talking about how really every kid needs chores, and they can start very young. My son was folding his own laundry at age 5. And before that, I had him help me move it. So they can do so much, and it makes you a much happier parent when you're not scrambling around like being their servant all the time. I mean,
I think one thing it turns out great is when our kids are doing their chores, then we do something similar, so they see us working too. I'll tidy my study while they're tidying the kitchen, as opposed to I'm sitting there watching TV while they do the dishwasher. So hey, we're all pitching in, and we're getting it done. Then we're going to go play or something. You said something when they're doing the chores that reminded me of another point, and that is never ever ever belittle them or insult them. So they do the dishwasher and they did a half half blank job or something, or weeding the side yard and they missed half the weeds or something. I found, and my parents did this, and I've yelled at my kids, and you are lazy. You should never say that. Never. Now you can say, it looks like you were being lazy. And one of my friends actually their dad had a great way of saying this, and when we were polishing the bottom of my boat before a race once, and my buddy, I did one side, he did the other side, and he came over and checked my side, and he said, looks like you had a couple vacations here.
Yeah.
In some of the spots I missed or didn't quite wipe hard enough because if the bottom's not smooth, you're not going to win the race. He's like, yeah, and then he kind of told a story when he was sanding the bottom of his boat, helping his dad. His dad would go, instead of, oh, hey, you're being lazy, that just makes the child feel.
Right.
If your parent says you are something, you're going to eventually believe it,
Right.
But it looks like you took a little vacation here. It kind of it takes the emotional capacity component out of it, and it kind of makes you, okay, well, maybe I did take a little vacation. And so I've started doing that with my kids. It looks like you take a little vacation when you're trying to clean your room there.
Right.
And we laugh and whatever. And just if you can laugh while you're disciplining, way better than getting angry,
Yeah, I would say that humor thing is really good. Also, we always talk about this with our staff and with kids, is to talk about the issue, not the person. So the issue is, like with your weeding, the weeding over there wasn't finished. It's not about you then. It's not like you are a bad person or anything like that. It's like, oh, the weeding isn't finished. So it's like you and I are talking about the weeding. We're not talking about your character.
Yeah.
And that's actually helpful with all relationships in the way you discuss something, because when you start shitting people or calling them an adjective, they're immediately going to get defensive. Or a kid could just say, okay, yeah, I am lazy. I'm not going to do anything else.
Right.
They could just respond with, yep, that's me. I'm not going to finish this.
Right.
As opposed to if you're just saying, hey, you know what, over here, this weeding looks really great. It's all finished. Over here, there's a little more weeding to be done. Oh, and it's like you're not, and you're not angry. You're not I love that, and I think a part of it we should also talk a little bit more about, just as a parent, how do you stop yourself when your kid has a behavior, whether you're in a restaurant or they haven't done their chore or whatever it is. What are some ways to not let your head explode and for you to become so angry that you're not able to kind of guide your child well? What do you advise people on that?
That old count to 10 in your head method, that's huge. And I'm just understanding, why am I so angry that my child is being lazy? Why would that make me angry? And it's because it's a reflection of me, because I don't want them growing up being as lazy as I am. And I think you as a parent or just as a grown adult, I look at all the past chances I had at success, and maybe I didn't fulfill those as much as I would have liked to, because of maybe my own laziness. All that those in my own internal self-doubt thoughts kind of come up, and I don't, and you want to just, inside it's almost like you're yelling at your child, don't be lazy because you're going to turn out like me.
Right.
And that's not healthy. So dealing with that in your own realm needs to happen, and just go, nobody's perfect. Right. And I turned out pretty good despite my mom yelling at me that I was lazy, and my teachers. Oh, you should see my second, third grade grades. Jimmy, he thinks about sailing too much. If only he thought about his homework, as much as he thought about sailing, he'd be a great student. And I was like, wow, I'm glad I didn't read that stuff as a kid. Or I guess I did, really. But honestly, my upbringing, it kind of made me feel like I was a lazy person, and I think I think a lot of us kind of take that away from our childhood, and I think that's why a lot of parents will. The dad on the soccer sideline when their child misses the kick or something, come on, it's because they probably want to see, if the child's successful on the soccer field, they feel successful as a parent, and then the opposite happens, and you gotta just deal with that, and not because I've seen, and I coach the kids' soccer teams a lot, and the kids. They shouldn't care. You don't see, we just watched the World Cup. I don't know if you watched a lot of the World Cup in the last month or so, but when those guys, those professionals, best in the world, when they miss a kick, they'd be a little, but they'd get right back at it, and then and they would be successful for the next 2 or 3 kicks, and for them to sit there and internalize and think they're a failure because they missed a kick, you don't want that in your child.
I love that. It's so funny because I think my sister did a whole course on mindfulness, and that's the big buzzword now. But I think when you were talking, I was like, that's just as a parent being mindful. Like when your kid is doing something in a restaurant or something, to be in your mind thinking, okay, I'm feeling really embarrassed right now because all these people are going to think I'm a really lame parent and my kid is being a brat, and you have all these things going through your head, and so then sometimes you react too quickly, not in a way that's going to be helpful to your child or the situation. And same with soccer or anywhere else. It's like if we can just take that moment to just think, okay, what's going on with me right now? Ooh, am I embarrassed about my child? Am I frustrated that my child isn't as good at this sport as some of the other kids? What are the true feelings that we're having? Because if we take that out on our kid, that will not lead to them feeling good about themselves, and probably could lead to much worse things for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much a good way to guarantee that your child's not going to want to play that sport very much longer, You reminded me of something I did with my oldest, who's 24 now. When she's probably 3 or 4, 3.5. She would throw little fits in the grocery store, and it was embarrassing. You felt like everybody's judging you as a parent.
Plus, because you're from the Sears family of pediatricians, what if they see you there?
I know. And so I had this little sign that we would keep in the diaper bag, and it said, "I apologize, tantrum in progress." And we'd literally sit it on the floor next to their child throwing a fit, and it would just kind of diffuse the situation, and the parents that walking by would kind of chuckle, "Oh yeah, my kids do that too," and I thought it was brilliant because it would take all the fear and the embarrassment away from me, and then I could parent way more effectively. I could address what was really dealing with the tantrum. And not get all emotional about it,
I love that. Just keep. We should provide that as a PDF for parents to print out.
Exactly.
But that is such a really good idea because also then you're also kind of bringing humor to the other parents around who, like you said, are mostly just feeling bad for you.
Right.
It's not like everyone's been through it before, and if someone is kind of judgmental, says something, you can blow them off. But if you have a funny sign like that, I love that idea. That is so great.
It was nice.
Tantrum in progress. I apologize for the disruption or the whatever.
Like that. A long time. That was 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's so good. So we can share stories about 20 years ago, and our kids won't feel bad about it.
Right. My daughters would probably say, "I never threw a tantrum," but one of the things we touched on earlier, and you do it in your podcast in the beginning, fostering independence. And I always want to ask you. I don't remember what grade the kids did the mission project or whatever.
Right.
Your kids did mission project, right? They built the model mission, and that's a big California thing. But are you going to do the project for the child, or are you going to let them do it, knowing they're probably going to show up with the crappiest looking project because all the other kids had their parents do it? Yet I always refused to put too much in. I had a little guidance and maybe here's a picture on the internet of some of the other this is what you could do, and yet I felt why is the child even getting this assignment in the first place? It's not so that I can create this amazing mission model. It's so the child can learn the history, the material gathering, and following instructions and recipes, and then feeling pretty good about what they've accomplished. Yet then they still show up in the happiest looking project.
Right. Well, I think it becomes, in several of the schools where my kids have been, it has been an in-school project. And I think, honestly, in this stage and era that we're in right now, I think in-school projects are really great. Where, because it's also the kids can learn sort of project and time management. When the teacher is helping them at those early grades, saying, okay, so today we're going to research about our mission, and then tomorrow we're going to decide which kind of materials, and maybe the homework is going out with your parents to get the materials from your list that you've created, not your parent. But I really like that concept just because I'm with you. Kids feel a lot more pride in things that they've done themselves, like carrying a perfectly made mission to school that their parent made is just, you don't have that same sense of confidence or competence. I think that's with everything. It's not just mission projects and everything. I think a lot of times as parents, because we can do things better, because we're older and have a lot more experience, we often just can't stand it and we step in and do for them. And I have a little bit of that personality because, like when I'm making chocolate chip cookies, I like them to be the same size or something like that. And bringing my own issues into the cookie making process. But when your kid does it themselves, even if they don't turn out like great the first time, they're like, I made this batch of cookies. So if you can hold yourself back as a parent and just let your kid go through that process of learning how to do things, which we all took the time to learn how to do things. Right. We burnt cookies. I forgot the baking soda once as a kid, and they completely spread out and are ruined and are flat. But guess what? You learn. Yeah. So I think part of it is just having that self-control as a parent to step back and let your child, if it's not a life-threatening or safety situation, let them figure it out themselves. Let them burn the cookies or not, make a lopsided, whatever mission. That's part of life. And if we're expecting perfection from our kids, they're not going to feel good about themselves.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So.
I thought of a situation a few months ago. Our daughter was doing her homework, math homework, and she's, I'm done with my math homework. Okay, great. Did you double check? Did you check your answers? Yep, I'm ready. I'm good. And I had kind of glanced a few times while she was doing them, and I saw a lot of mistakes. And part of me wanted to just jump in there. You tell her you've missed half of these. Let's work on it. But she was kind of not open to that. Right. And instead of just saying, look, you're gonna fail this lesson. And since she was wanting to be done with it, and you sure you double checked and you're ready to turn it in? Yep. All right. Yeah. And sure enough, she turned it in the next day and got a 50% grade, and then had to deal with that consequence. Right. But I felt good that that was her, and she actually learned that because many parents would just look, let me just do it for you, and I'll send you to school with 100%, and then the child wouldn't have never learned. And so the teacher ended up, well, here's the ones you got wrong, and you need to go back. And so, certainly the next day after school, she had to come to us and go, well, I missed these. Can we go over why I missed them? And way better learning, as opposed to the day before me yelling at her and making her feel bad about missing them. So, it's all about deciding when not to rescue a child. I always envision a mama bear. You see the mama bear carrying the cubs sometimes, but then you also see the footage of the mama bear crossing the river, and then the cubs whining on the other side. I can't do it, and the mama knows if those cubs don't learn to cross that river, they're not going to survive, right? So if she knows if she just keeps carrying them across the river, they're not going to make it into adulthood. So the mama bear shows them, and then just waits, and the whine, I can't do it, and then they eventually do it. They always do. So the mama bear knew, I can't rescue you for this particular time. And I've kind of tried to think, does my child really need rescuing, or can they probably most likely at least attempt it? And if they can, they need to.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good analogy and a great place for us to end.
Okay.
Cool. That was really good. I want to find some of that video footage because I think that would be really good for parents to think about, because it's so true. We need to let our kids learn and do and fail, and we're not doing that very well right now. And so, this has been so great. I've learned so much, and I know that the listeners will really enjoy learning from you. What is the name of your new podcast, and when does it start?
It'll be the Dr. Sears Family Podcast, and you can. We're in the middle of kind of polishing our first few episodes, and you'll be able to find it on AskDrSears.com, our family's website. That's fairly popular. It's a big parenting website. AskDrSears.com, and the podcast. It's me and my sister, who's kind of our office health coach. And then my other brother, who's a father. We just sit and we do fun stuff, talk about this kind of stuff. We also take a lot of phone calls from concerned parents all around the world to address their concerns.
That's going to be awesome. Yeah. I'm going to become a listener as soon as it's out. I'm going to follow you. So thanks for being on today. This was really fun. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. For notes, links, and information about what Bones and I talked about in this episode, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 51. I'll leave you with some words from Dr. Jim Sears from the Ask Dr. Sears blog. It's under the heading, Nature Can Make You Feel Better. These are some of the reasons I have been prescribing 15 minutes of nature each morning to all of my patients with certain brain issues, ADD, anxiety, depression, to name a few. A vigorous walk outside in the morning sun. I call it my triple morning therapy because we are taking care of 3 needs at once. Vitamin D, really important for many systems of the body. Sunlight in the eyes. Getting some of this in the morning will wake up the brain and improve your sleep at night. Increased heart rate. Of course, the positive effects of some good exercise are too many to count. Even after my most sleep-deprived nights, just a quick walk in the morning sun will make me way more productive the rest of the day.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.